Hello and welcome to a special Q&A recording for Underplayed, one of our special event films as part of the 45th Annual Toronto International Film Festival. As part of Share Her Journey, TIFF's commitment to supporting women behind and in front of the camera, we're thrilled to spotlight the incredible films made by women this year, particularly this one, directed by Stacey Lee. My name is Ravi Srinivasan, and I'm one of the feature film programmers at the festival. And I'm thrilled to be here with Stacey to speak about this empowering and moving documentary, Underplayed. Welcome, Stacey. Before we begin, I want to send thanks to our audiences for joining us. As an organization still impacted by COVID, we need to support our audiences so that we can continue to present films for future generations and preserve these diverse and important voices. I also want to remind everyone that this film is eligible for the People's Choice Award, so please vote for Underplayed and all of your other favorite films at tiff.net/vote. Stacey, welcome to this virtual Q&A, and thank you so much for bringing Underplayed to TIFF and our audiences.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Look, I don't want to disregard the moment that we're, currently in, and this unprecedented nature of, having several meaningful and transformative films like this one being presented in a virtual setting while we're all going through a global pandemic. But so maybe can you talk to us a little bit about your own experience? How are you? Where are you? And also, the process of completing this film, given the time that we're in.
Yeah, great question. So I'm currently sitting in Los Angeles, California. When everything went down in March, I was actually in New York. I was doing the beginnings of the color session, so setting the color, all those kind of things. So when everything kind of shut down, it was a very interesting time. We were in the finishing part, which is super challenging because you have huge amount of technical capabilities that you need to bring on board the film. It's not just rough cuts and sending low res files. This is like the real deal. And for us, that was, 4.5 months of, shooting at 4K. So the logistics with it were intense. But at the same time, it's also very humbling, a very privileged position to be a filmmaker, very privileged position to even have access to, the people and the finishing resources we did, and everybody who was on the team in the finishing part. So we were doing the final sound mixes, which we actually did via Zoom, and we're doing live feeds down, which was, I think we would do them as 6-hour sessions, 4 or 5 times. I think we did it. And it was actually completed in Toronto. So I was sitting at that particular point in time on the East Coast. Editor was on the West Coast. Our sound mixer was
Wow.
in Toronto, and we would all, just get on the phone, and it was actually a pleasure to be working on something. You know what I mean? And then same with color. Our DP is fortunate enough to come from New York, and that's where our colorist was as well. So those two were able to stay close and, have a little color bubble, so to speak. And then the rest of it has just been remote. So I had to be super clear with my communication. It's a lot more effort, but at the same time, it was just, just such a privilege to even get to finish the film. Everybody's clearly working at the best capability under really extreme circumstances. So I guess the only sad thing is that I won't be able to attend TIFF. Like that's the bummer.
Yeah, it is a bummer. And, piecing these kind of projects and these artistic endeavors remotely is the new normal that we have to do. And that is definitely the unfortunate aspect of this scenario, is that you cannot be with us for the outdoor screening, but we're definitely thankful that we're able to make this aspect work. So I want to ask you about, how did you get involved with this project, and sort of what was your inspiration to sort of, bringing this important issue and these important stories to our audiences?
Yeah, I have been, I've always been a big music fan, and I've always been very interested, particularly in the cultures that surround music. So I'm not necessarily per se an electronic music fan, going to raves and all the rest of it, although I did do that at one point in my life. I just am more interested in the culture and, what's kind of happening with the issues surrounding that. And electronic music in particular was interesting to me because it was actually, women were hugely influential in pioneering all of the components that went into the electronic music industry today. And within that, the genres of electronic music, techno, house music, all of the huge plethora of them just came from very diverse cultures. LGBT community, Black, white, Hispanic. It was like beautiful, the amount of diversity that was kind of born from the style of music. So it was very, very interesting to me to see how that played out today, where diversity was just so deeply lacking within this field. And as a filmmaker, we have a similar issue within our industry, which we're trying to address. And I saw this as an opportunity to tell a story about the importance of diversity of voices as it pertains to creativity, but also just as it pertains to our own sense of well-being as a whole, to be able to express yourself however you like. And if that's only limited to a few, privileged few, then the world is missing out on so much music or film or, architecture or whatever that issue might be. So for me, this was a great vessel to kind of talk about the issues of gender inequality, of inequality in all its forms, and to be able to use it through a lens of something that's very, popular culture, particularly right now. Mm-hmm. The story it came to me. I did a short film on a similar subject a few years back, and then I was approached by the team at Bud Light, and they would been already doing a bunch of work within this space. And, obviously, if it's important to me whenever you partner with anybody that their kind of brand values and everything align with the story. It's one thing to be like, oh, this is cool and hip to be talking about right now, but it needs to be kind of aligned with actions. And so that was a huge part of the initial kind of research project for me was actually figuring out the intentions, obviously, behind, where this was coming from and how honest I could be as a filmmaker in order to tell this story, because it's not, sunshine and roses necessarily. It is very challenging, and it is kind of unpacking a lot of uncomfortable things, even for the brand itself to acknowledge. So I was fortunate enough to be given this privilege, and here we are.
That's great. No, that's incredible. And so, it's you mentioned diversity and talking about gender parity. And one of the things that I thought about while watching this documentary was, it seems that the conversation of diversity, inclusion, and gender parity has been talked about in the film industry, maybe for the last 5 or 6 years with, Oscar So White and of course the Me Too movement. And I'm wondering, do you think that the music industry has been behind on this, sort of catching up to this, and what are your thoughts on how the difference between, music and film and the arts in general are sort of, catching up and, which they need to in this kind of arena of discussion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exceptionally challenging. I think, when you look at the statistics, and this is what really drove me to do the film as a whole, the Annenberg Institute study that came out that had 3% of all music, technical production roles is created by women, and 0.3 is women of color. Now that for me is just, it's unacceptable. There's certain genres of music that might be more progressive than others, but I think by and by, a lot of when you think about how much music we listen to, we consume on the radio, on television, every single day we are bombarded by the sound. And if it's not being reflective of the world we see around us, then there's something kind of not quite right there. Mm-hmm. So I was very, very struck by that and just surprised. That was a huge, and as I am talking to people who were in the music industry and sharing these kind of statistics, and they were like, surely not, but sometimes the most obvious thing is, kind of in plain sight. Film industry, as well. I mean, there's a lot of incredible movements, and since all of this has happened, and there's that increased sensitivity. But I think it was. I'm trying to think of the UN came out with a study. It's going to take something like another 100 years to close the gender gap, and that's not in my lifetime. You know what I mean? So I think that there are a lot of incredible things that are being done, and and it was very important within this film to acknowledge those, to see them, to figure out what initiatives are working. Inclusion riders, which the film industry have, kind of brought to the arts world in particular. But it's constant work. It's like everything that's going with the Black Lives Matter movement right now. This isn't something that happened in May and June and July. This is constant work. And that's kind of what is really important to kind of communicate with this film, is just that vigilance on ourselves, no matter what form of expression you have, to always be aware of the voices and, how much we are kind of getting to experience.
Mm-hmm. And then speaking about like your own production, to your point, you were able to have, the luxury, the freedom to have an all-female crew, and in the editorial department. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that decision and that experience, and of completing this process on your terms, for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that was a huge connecting point, as we were making this film, was being able to talk with the people that I was working with about the issues that I had experienced. And more often than not, it is just given the opportunity. Everyone does their first Nike commercial. You know what I mean? Like every single director, no matter how amazing you are, or your first feature film, it's been given the opportunity to do that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have that exact thing on your reel yet. Doesn't mean that you don't have the talent to do so. And in this project, I was surrounded myself with, from our DP, Zoe Simonier, she's an incredible cinematographer and carried this insanely heavy camera. You can imagine all the festivals for 4 months, and did not like all of the same issues that you have in the electronic music industry, where women can't be technical, or women can't, do the rough and tumble. Same issues apply. She is carrying more gear than anybody else, hands down, I've ever seen. And did so with grace and finesse and all of these wonderful sorts of things. So much of it is about being given the opportunity. Zoe's only 24 years old. She's got an amazing career ahead of her. And I was just so, so fortunate. And there's something beautiful too when you work with people who do appreciate the opportunity, is they work so hard back. The collaboration that you have together, coming up with shot lists and being able to feedback and work is not just an assumption that I deserve to be here, that came. And that it was the same. So Georgia, who was our editor on the job, this was her first feature film editing as well. So there was a lot of trust that goes into it, but there's also just a lot of compassion and space to be able to kind of, I wanted to create an environment that was enable people to try and, do their best to have this opportunity, because if we've all done our firsts, then something else will come along, because the proof is in the pudding of the work. And Kate Simcoe is our music composer. It was all, none of it I ever wanted to feel token, or that I was doing it for the sake of, the PR of the film, or for what it was about. It was all about finding the right person for the job, and having the sensitivity, because what's being talked about in the film is exceptionally vulnerable stuff. It's not just, the artists themselves. We had these very raw, honest conversations, and I wanted to, hold those sacred. And be able to work with people. It didn't matter who they were. William Krause, who was our producer on the job, amazing supporter of women and female projects and equality in general. Amazing person. Probably the biggest, tutor of that trumpet there can be. So it doesn't, and this is true of the film itself, whether you're male or female, it's like it takes all of us to make the change in the industry. I remember one of the artists saying to me, you know, I don't know why people always come to me to figure out the problem of gender inequality and, you know, electronic music. It's like yelling into the echo chamber. If there's only women yelling, then it's just like nothing's going to change.
Right.
We all need to be a part of that and be conscious and aware of that. So I think there is that balance. There's obviously access and opportunity, but mixed with like everybody's having a chance and being there for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm. There's a great deal of CanCon, as we call it here, in this film, Underplayed, from Niagara Falls' Rez, who will be performing after the drive-in screening of Underplayed, and also Toronto's own Chippy Nonstop, who I have the pleasure of knowing as well.
Great.
So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, you know, getting these artists, incredible female artists involved, and you know, the process of selecting these amazing artists that are featured here.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a New Zealander. I understand what it is like to be an underdog within your region. I think there's a certain amount of humbleness and kindness, and I will never forget the first time we were in Toronto a lot for this film, which was great. We're there in the summertime too, so we got a very slightly, probably other people would say, distinct, different perspective of the city.
Yeah.
And the people and the crews and how everyone was just so down for the opportunity. And that for us was like, it's a great energy to be working with. You know what I mean? You're just like, you want to be surrounding yourself with people who want to be there, not because they have to be there. So the Canadian part of it was actually very organic, because we were there, you know, the Toronto music scene in particular is very eclectic. There is a lot of underground, Chippy, CL, all doing incredible work in the underground scene and really actually pushing politically in dance music a lot of the issues. Doesn't mean to say it's perfect, but they're doing an exceptional job of bringing people together. And when we went to Europe, you know, Chippy was working with a lot of the European artists. So it was amazing how far the Canadian kind of spread had kind of infiltrated the film, whether we meant it or not. Choosing the artists, so much of it, of course, is about their willingness to open up and be a part of this. It comes with so much trust, because these issues, particularly when it comes to talking about, you don't want to be, the last thing I wanted to make was a bunch of women complaining on screen. No one wants to watch that film. So for me, it's always balancing the right mix of, you know, this subject's openness and willing to actually be honest about the issues, because it is, you know, someone like Rez has risen up and she's got to an incredible place in her career. Everything she's done it herself. She taught herself, she mixed, she masters, she does all of it herself. It's an amazing kind of accomplishment. But she's also now in a position where she can be a voice. And it's hard for those voices, because, you know, you can lose opportunities if you do speak out. So I am very appreciative of how brave all the women were in the film to actually take that risk, to speak out and talk about some of the things that could potentially risk bookings for them. The process was very much, in terms of, you know, getting artists on board, was very much people who, like, I can reach out and talk about the issues, to talk about the opportunities, but if people aren't willing to kind of come to the table with that same sense of honesty and reflection, then it's not going to be helpful for the film. So wherever there was reticence in the film, or people who, you know, didn't feel comfortable, they wanted to be on a film. Of course, everyone wants to be in a film, but talking about the issues was a large part of it. So that for me was very, it enabled me to like figure out exactly who the right voices were, because the people who were open and willing to come forth with their stories, you're automatically in a much better place of trust and, you know, and to be able to get something, you know, important for screen. And this isn't about a snappy, you know, one-liner or something controversial. This is about honesty. And I think, you know, audiences connect with human beings, whether you like EDM music or not. The most important thing for me was trying to find the human behind the story, and to actually hear from them firsthand experiences of what it kind of gone and how that kind of has a flow-on effect, so that other young girls who watch this film can be like, you know, that could be me. You know, I think there
Yeah.
was a lot in the film. If you can't see it, you can't be it. And that's a huge kind of, you know, huge kind of point about visibility that needs to happen with this particular industry and this scene.
Absolutely. And yeah, just to your point, I think the young women who are aspiring DJs or music creators who find this film, whether it's on the festival date or, you know, a few years after, are going to be deeply inspired by this documentary. Stacey, that is all the time we have for this Q&A. I want to thank you so much for bringing this film here on behalf of TIFF, the City of Toronto. Thanks again for bringing the film here, but also taking time for this Q&A today. Thank you so much, Stacey.
Thanks, Ravi. It was great. It was so wonderful to talk to you, and we're so proud to be premiering in Toronto. This feels full circle. First day of filming there, here we are premiering there. So thank you so much. We're very appreciative.
You're quite welcome. And just a reminder to everyone, please vote for Underplayed at tiff.net/vote. And we hope you enjoyed the festival experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.